Hey everyone, welcome back to Love Wins, where the truth matters because it's the truth that sets us free. And that truth is not a small t, it's a capital T. Truth is not an idea or set of ideas, it's a person. So this series, we're in part 3, What is Jesus like? We're going to continue in his genealogy before he was even born to explain where he came from. And in it, we're going to find some humor, we're going to find some grace, we're going to find some amazingness, and we're also going to find some incredible human folly and stupidity. So without further ado, we jumped in last week with Tamar, who was the daughter-in-law of Judah, by whom he had twin boys. And you saw how crazy that story was. Today we're going to dig into, before we go any further, to Rahab. We're going to cover her today, but before we get there, we're going to cover who is Israel. Israel's in the news all the time these days, the war with Hamas and whatever. Today, Israel is considered a nation, and in some respects that's true, but we need to understand the roots of the nation of Israel to understand who and what Israel really is. Israel considers themselves the sons of Abraham, but Abraham was not an Israelite. There was no such thing in his day as an Israelite. Abraham was a Syrian from Syria. His wife Sarah from Syria. They had a son Isaac, so he was Syrian, and even though he was born in the land of Canaan. So if you want to make it by birth, he's a Canaanite. If you want to make it by heritage, he's a Syrian. He marries Rebekah. He goes back home to find her. Abraham sends a servant back to get her and bring her to Canaan. She's also a Syrian from the same family. So Isaac and Rebekah have Jacob and Esau, who are Syrian/Canaanite. Syrian by heritage, Canaanite by birth. Still no Israel. Jacob, when he is quite grown, has wives, children, he's on his way back to face Esau. It's then that God changes his name from Jacob to Israel. So the descendants of Jacob are Israelites. So if you want to make it about bloodline, there is no Israel until Jacob, and it would only be his descendants that are Israelites. But if we're really honest with the story, we're going to find out that's not really what it is either. So in the genealogy of Jesus, he comes from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Judah, who is the fourth son of Jacob. His mother is Leah. Then we get into this crazy story that we covered last week of Judah and Tamar. Judah is his daughter-in-law. That whole thing never should have happened, but it did, and God lets us know that it did, and that Jesus came from that relationship that was weird and wacky and never should have happened. I told you we were going to cover some amazing stuff, some grace stuff, and some complete human stupidity stuff. So let's get the human stupidity and ignorance right out of the way. If you do some research online, you will find several Jewish sources who try and tell us that Tamar was also an Israelite. The reason why they do that is because they're trying desperately to keep their family line, their bloodline, clean. But at that point in history, the only Israelites were the children of Jacob, because Jacob was Israel. So only his children were Israelites at that point. And then the children they had would be Israelites, and so on and so forth. Tamar was not a child of Jacob. She is in no way an Israelite. It's not possible in any way, shape, or form. Judah isn't even living home when all of this happens. He's away from his family and his people. So she has nothing to do with them. So when we try and rewrite history to suit our goals and our ideals and our whatever, we're not being honest. What I want you to realize today is that Jesus is honest. Jesus doesn't rewrite history. He doesn't whitewash history. He doesn't hide people from his history. In fact, Matthew, in telling the story of Jesus' history, goes out of his way to tell us there are people in this line that leads to Jesus that ought not be there according to those who would wish to keep the line pure. So the first is Tamar. The next one is Rahab. So this is Matthew chapter 1, the genealogy of Jesus. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac begot Jacob. Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. That would be Joshua and Levi and Simeon and so on and so forth. Judah begot Perez and Zerah by Tamar. We covered that last week. Perez begot Hezron. Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Amminadab. Amminadab begot Nahshon. Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz by Rahab. Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David the king. So we've covered from Abraham to King David. That's the first half of the genealogy of Jesus. From Abraham to David, then from David to Jesus. In the line from Abraham to David, we've encountered 3 women. Tamar, Rahab, and Ruth. Well, let's go back and see who Rahab was. So you'll find that story in Joshua chapter 2. Joshua, the 2nd chapter. I'll get there, trust me. I don't want it to be my words. I want it to be the words from the Bible. All right, so background. These are the Israelites because now they've become a nation over time. The descendants of Jacob have expanded and expanded. They moved to Egypt during the time of Joseph, and they grew and they grew and they grew. Became enslaved because Egypt was threatened by how fast and big they were growing. And then Moses comes along and leads them out of Egypt, out of slavery, amazing miracles by God, through the Red Sea, through the wilderness, water from a rock, all kinds of food from the sky, all kinds of miracles. Moses has died. Joshua has taken over. They are finally moving into the promised land, which is Canaan, which is where Abraham started. When they come to Canaan, the first town that they have to conquer, city, is Jericho. So if you've ever heard the song, March Around the City of Jericho and the Walls Come Tumbling Down, that's this story. So here it is. Now Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. Now Joshua the son of Nun sent out 2 men from Acacia Grove to spy secretly, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." So they went, and they came to a house of a harlot named Rahab, and they lodged there. So Rahab is a prostitute living and working in Jericho, a Canaanite. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, "Behold, men have come here tonight from the children of Israel to search out the country." So the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you and who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the country." Then the woman, Rahab, took the 2 men and hid them. And she said, "Yes, the men came in to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it happened as the gate was being shut when it was dark that the men went out. Where they went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you may overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them among the stalks of flax, which she had laid out in order on the roof. Then the men pursued them by the road to Jordan, to the fords. As soon as those who pursued them had gone out, they shut the gate. Now before they lay down, she came up to them on the roof, and she said to the men, "I know the Lord has given you the land, that the terror of you has fallen on us, that all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did for the 2 kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon as we heard these things, our hearts melted, neither did there remain any courage in any one of us because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven alone, and on earth beneath." That's quite a testimony for a prostitute from Jericho. "Now, therefore, I beg you, Swear to me by the Lord, since I have shown you kindness, that you will also show kindness to my father's house, and give me a true token. Spare my father, spare my mother, spare my brothers, spare my sisters, and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. So the men answered her, Our lives for yours. If none of you tell this business of ours, and it shall be, when the Lord has given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with you. Then she let them down by a rope through the window from her house, which was on the city wall, and she dwelt on the wall. And she said to them, Get to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you. Hide there for 3 days, until the pursuers have returned. Afterward you may go your way. So the men said to her, We will be blameless of this oath of yours, which you have made us to swear, unless, when we come into the land, you bind this line of scarlet cord in the window, through which you let us down, and unless you bring your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your father's household to your own home. So it shall be that whoever goes outside the doors of your house into the street, his blood will be on his own head, and we will be innocent. And whoever is with you in the house, whoever, his blood shall be on our head, if a hand is laid on him. And if you tell this business of ours, then we will be free from our oath, which you have made us swear. That's Rahab. Now, she gathered whoever, and they came into her house, and they were spared. And she came to live with the Israelites, and she ended up marrying one of the spies, whose name was Salmon, and they had children, and one of those children was Boaz. If you are still thinking literally and you want to track the bloodline, first of all, Abraham and Sarah aren't Israelites, and Isaac and Rebekah aren't Israelites, and so you start with Jacob, and then you go to Judah. And in that very first generation after Jacob, you have a wife who's not an Israelite. So already the bloodline is cut in half at best. And then we don't know who the wives are from there on for a bit. And then Rahab comes in. And half of the bloodline is Canaanite again. So you have Salmon, who's not a pure Israelite anymore because of at least Tamar. And now Boaz is a tainted Israelite with a Canaanite mother, so he's less than half Israelite. And then Boaz marries Ruth, who's a Moabite, not an Israelite. So Boaz, who's already less than half Israelite at best, marries Ruth, who is a Moabite. So their son is less than a quarter Israelite. My point is, by the time you get to King David, you don't have an Israelite king. You have a king of many nations. You have blood from many nations flowing through his veins, because a Moabite is not a Canaanite. You have an international king who has a history that's all interwoven with all the peoples. And when you come to the book of Revelation, it actually starts in Daniel, but when you come to the book of Revelation, there is a theme that runs consistently from the very beginning of Revelation all the way through, that this message about Jesus, this revelation of Jesus Christ, is for every nation, every kindred, every language, and every people. Because Jesus came for every language and every kindred and every nation and every people. Because Jesus' bloodline is not an Israelite bloodline. It's a humanity bloodline. It's not a bloodline of perfect people. It's a bloodline of imperfect people. It's not a bloodline of stories that make us proud. It's a bloodline of messy stories, just like ours. And if we were to do the history of our own family tree and lay it all out and tell the truth about all of it, it would be messy. His is messy. He knows your mess. He was born into a mess. And we're not even done yet. So when we come back next week, we're going to find out who David married and the son that continued on the line that led to Jesus. It's really messy. And then we're going to get to Mary. where God asks her to have his son when she has no husband. And everybody assumes that she's sleeping around. And Jesus was born under that cloud. That's what we'll get to in our next episode. Let me assure you that whoever you are, wherever you came from, whatever your background is, whatever your nationality is, whatever your history is, whatever your shame is, whatever your guilt is, whatever your story is, Jesus knows. And he's proud to call you his family if you're willing, because that's the kind of God that he is. So when we fight wars based on bloodlines and colors and nationalities and languages, we're not fighting a fight that Jesus is interested in. He's not interested, because in every war, his family is on both sides, because we're all his. We'll see you next time.